Welcome to the last thing between you and drinks. Yeah. Also known as Millennials and Influencer Marketing, how to organize and optimize for B2B. So, you might be thinking, I'm not a millennial. That's true. I'm not a millennial, but I do have with me my co-presenter, Alex Wren from LinkedIn. She's a content marketing manager at LinkedIn and resident millennial marketing expert. So, yes.
Thank you.
Alex is going to bust some myths for us, give us some behavioral research insights, and some really great examples of B2B millennial marketing. We're going to go on a little bit of a journey here together. Oh, there we go. In terms of influencer marketing relevant to B2B, and then we'll drill down into the specifics of what that means when you're working with millennials. I'm kind of curious, how many people, and who can fix this? There we go. How many people in here are between 18 and 34? All right. All you boomers, or some of you boomers, you Gen Xers, look at how many people you're ignoring in your marketing. Because I'm pretty confident that most people don't have strategically focused, especially in B2B, efforts directed towards that particular audience. And you'll find today in our presentation as we go through this exactly how powerful that group is. So, there we go. So in the world of B2B marketing, it's evolved quite a bit. I gave a presentation about B2B influencer marketing here last year, and at the time, B2B was woefully behind B2C. Only 15% of B2B companies, based on some research that we did with Brian Solis and a company called Tracker, were involved with ongoing influencer marketing programs compared to B2C, which is something like 55%. But things have changed since then. Now more B2B companies have, they've been experimenting. They're using more data. They're using more search and social data, for example, as a reflection of demand for queries on a search engine or conversations in social, and aligning those ideas with topical authority with influencers who have audiences that are actively interested in those topics, right? Another thing is integration with PR and media relations, working with industry influencers to add credibility to earned media coverage. More B2B marketers are buying influence. In other words, they are actually engaging with influencers on a paid basis. This is far more common in B2C than in B2B. There's also a lot more integration across different channels and different disciplines beyond just marketing itself. Lots of content is manifesting as interactive, like the little movie that was playing of an interactive ebook that we did for SAP, and also ongoing. Lots more is ongoing. Instead of just asking people to do stuff for you right when a campaign launches, actually managing that relationship on an ongoing basis. So there's a lot of changes that have happened. And in this world of information overload that we live in, it's really hard to stand out. It's not enough to just inform our buyers. It's time to start inspiring them. It's not enough to educate them. It's time to make them feel something. And there's something very, very powerful about creating credible experiences with influencers to cut through all those things that our audiences are doing to block ads, block formal marketing messages, and that sort of thing. So whether you're targeting a cause-focused, purpose-focused millennial or a features and benefits and results-focused Gen Xer, this is a perfect combination. In the 6 years plus that we've been working with B2B influencer marketing for lots of major brands and mid-market brands, we found that companies fall into some different categories. And I think right now today, there's lots of people that are just experimenting. There's people who've tried it and it didn't work so well. And there's people who are out probably killing it. But I want to help folks understand where you are in this spectrum so you can understand what's possible, what it is that you could achieve. Now, a lot of folks start out in experimentation. They're working with people that they already know, influencers they already know, and they try it out as a single campaign, throwing digital spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks. And then you start to think about, okay, well, we've got to make this efficient, so we're going to start developing processes. We'll start, trying like BuzzSumo and some other technologies that are very low cost to help us identify who those influencers are. And we'll start to invite new people that we don't know to be a part of our influencer collaboration or marketing programs. And then you evolve into relationships, because really anything below that is transactional, right? We've got to make it meaningful. And with so much competition for the tier 1 or top tier influencers, the only thing that will keep them still working with you, especially organically, is if they feel strongly about the relationship that you have with them. So we're talking now about more sophisticated investments in influencer relationship management platforms, getting more sophisticated in how to recruit and engage influencers, and getting a lot more sophisticated about the types of content opportunities that you interact with them on. Authority is where we get C-level or executive level sponsorship. Now, not only are we working with influencers, but we're also creating influencers, especially with our employees. We're identifying influence as a universal thing. And with integration, we have full process marketing and platform integration. So across the organization, we're thinking about influencers in any kind of content that we create, and not just for marketing, but for PR, customer service, talent acquisition. Any scenario where you publish content publicly could be more credible if there was an industry or an internal expert providing an authentic voice. So think about where you might fit in there, what the opportunities might be for you. Suffice it to say, influencer marketing is a hot topic right now. In fact, I just took this last week, more popular on Google Trends than content marketing and even social media, which is crazy. And that high attention also extends to confusion about millennials, right? How do we work with them? They're lazy, they're entitled, they're this, they're that. Trust me, Alex is going to bust some of those myths. There's also still an opportunity for clarity around influencer marketing, and I like to look at what it is that people are achieving. There's a couple of stats that I think that are interesting. Some companies are seeing nearly a 10-to-1 return in earned media value when they work with influencers on programs, or a 10x conversion rate, according to Content Marketing Institute. Or according to McKinsey, a 37% increased retention rate with customers that were acquired through content that was collaborated on with industry influencers. And the real opportunity when working with influencers in B2B extends across the entire customer life cycle, right? And so you've heard the word empathy a lot today. I know Brian mentioned it, or predicted it would be mentioned a lot this morning. And really, empathy with your customers will really tell the tale whether, if you really want your customers to see themselves in your marketing content, if there are millennials in your target audience, then they should be in part of your influencer strategy as well. So from an attract standpoint, we're talking about partnering with people who have reach to audiences that we are having difficulty reaching otherwise. Or from an engagement standpoint, particularly amongst the millennial age group who've grown up on the internet with apps and used to learning how to create videos as kids, you know, very different than my experience and some of you. You have talented content creators we can tap into for creating more engaging and authentic content. Also from a conversion standpoint, influencers are trusted, and that equates to a force multiplier when it comes to content that can convert. When it comes to retention, you can focus on employee influencers. Work with industry influencers and your community to grow and meet those retention goals. And in terms of advocacy, you know, everyone in here does case studies, right? Everyone publishes case studies, but do you ever pay attention to how influential the brand or the spokesperson is from that client in that case study? This is something to think about. And there's software you can use to literally determine one person over another who should be part of your customer case study. With greater influence and their amplification of that case study, you'll see a lot better exposure. So think about where those opportunities lie. Now, I found even simple influencer collaborations can generate ROI. Now, here's an example from a field service management software company that wanted to introduce a new concept or expression to the market and create demand around it. What better way to introduce something new to a marketplace than through someone who already has credibility in that marketplace? People are actively paying attention. So we engaged Shep Hyken to write an introduction and to do some social sharing. And because of his credibility, he opened the door of attention to a new concept that wasn't used very much in that industry. And as a result, well over 200 downloads, 500,000 plus qualified sales leads, and 1.5 in projected pipeline revenue, all off of one asset and then the promotions around it. There's some other key things that working with influencers, whether they're millennials, Gen X, or boomers, or whatever, solve for in B2B. This is the blocking and tackling of a lot of B2B marketing. We're trying to reach the right people, right? And here's an example from Oracle where it's an ungated asset working with 10 influencers. 80% of the content was actually created by the influencers, not by an agency, not by the brand staff, right? And it was able to beat the average views goal by over 1,000 in 2 weeks. And all the other assets had been out there up to 2 years before. So this is something that happened very quickly, obviously led to some success. So it's great for reach. It's great for engagement. IT service management company wanted to launch an influencer marketing pilot, driving awareness and engagement across 5 channels with a very specific group of target customers, decision makers, right? Those influencers, and this is a multifaceted campaign, which would fill up more than this slide, but those influencers opening up doors through amplification and promotion. Compared to previous campaigns, there was a 170% increase in views of their content, 437% increase in content shares compared to non-influencer content. And there's some other really cool stats with this particular campaign that I don't know that I can say, but I can say that they won a Killer Content Award this year. So congrats to Sherwell Software for that. Another thing to solve for is, of course, conversion. So here's a gated asset, substantial piece on digital commerce with some tier 1 influencers, including Brian Solis and Chuck Martin. And again, because of the credibility they brought to the table in concert with the brand, exceeded the conversion rate goal by over 260%. So these are things that you can operationalize. You can make it part of what it is that you do in your content marketing, but you've got to be maintaining those relationships, right? You've got to have people warm and on tap. And that takes an ongoing effort. Now, what we do to create those relationships is this simple model here. And it's a combination of micro-content and campaigns. This is a bit oversimplified, but trust me, we use this model for a long time. So micro-content is a simple ask of an influencer. This all assumes you've already identified and qualified the influencer as being relevant for your customers and for your company. So micro-content are just simple asks. So the level of effort is here for the influencer, but the return on exposure, because they're part of your project, is up here, right? So these are very simple things. So what you're looking for is not only the content, the 100 words or whatever, but you're looking to create an experience for them so that they realize that, wow, when I work with your brand and I contribute stuff, you're amazing to work with. And it starts to build a relationship. And now you can start to make bigger asks, right? Full interview, 10-question interviews, contributions to white books and position papers and those sorts of things. Those are the campaigns. And these content experiences you create simultaneously create the content, but they also create an experience that develops the relationship. And with a strong relationship, you'll get much more powerful content from the influencers and especially amplification, right? That influencer sharing something that's contextually relevant and organic with their audience that they had a part in creating is one of the most powerful forms of distribution you can possibly hope for. And to make that kind of advocacy built into your programs is a simple function of this dynamic. So there's some big questions I think that need to be answered. One is, it's so misunderstood. What is influence? Is it popularity? No. It's the ability to affect action. If what you're doing in the name of influencer marketing is not affecting action, then how in the heck are you going to measure its impact, right? The other big question is, who's influential? Is it just the famous people, the keynote speakers, the book authors, the academics? No, everybody's influential. Everybody in here is influential. Everyone in here has had a conversation today with someone else, and there was some kind of conclusion in that conversation. Influence occurred in that conversation, right? And that holistic view of influence opens up a lot of opportunities for you. The speakers here are influential. You'll find lots of different types of influencers in any group like this. You find brandividuals, right? These are people who make it their business to be famous. Then you have micro-influencers. There are many more types. Just going to keep it simple. Micro-influencers are people who have niche, they have domain authority, but they have a niche community. Active community, though. When they talk, people listen and they take action, right? Strategy with a brandividual is that you get a couple of brandividuals and you hope for lots of activity, But if I could have 100 micro-influencers, you know, I'm going to get a lot more of the thing that I'm actually after, right? A little bit from a lot of people. Ultimately, B2B needs all kinds of influencers. They're like ingredients to a delicious recipe, a delicious content recipe. And I love this example from Dell's Influencer Marketing Playbook, where they literally have, they have a range of influencers identified with examples and types, literally from actual celebrities down to up-and-comers. And I shouldn't say down to up-and-comers, it's just, that's the spectrum. Up-and-comers are often people who are establishing their career. They're often people in that millennial age category. And that's where Alex is going to come in.
Cool, thanks, Lee. So why should you care about millennials? Well, there's over 2 billion millennials worldwide. Our purchasing power just is increasing and increasing. And on top of all that, there's so many people searching for us online and writing articles about us. So clearly there's a lot of interest to know more about us. And in about 2 years, which is crazy, we're going to take up about half of the workforce. So I made it my mission to do some research about millennials at LinkedIn. We sent out a survey to about 9,000 millennials globally to find out what they're doing on LinkedIn, how they're consuming content, and what percentage of them are actually making purchasing decisions. And we were pleasantly surprised to find that a lot of them are actually on LinkedIn. They're active on LinkedIn, they're publishing on LinkedIn. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But they have purchasing power, or they influence the people that are making the purchasing decisions. So we were happy to find that. If you're still not convinced, I think we had to raise hands earlier, and about 75% of the people, or at least half, were millennials, so you're already convinced about why millennials are important. But if you're not quite yet, the future is millennials. About half of them are doing B2B research. About 73% of them have some kind of influence over B2B buying decisions, and this is huge. 34% of them say that they're the sole person that's making B2B buying decisions. In addition to that, we're looking at experts and our peers in order to make these buying decisions and looking for advice too. So to give you kind of an idea of what we're talking about here, kind of like the person we're talking about, I want to introduce you to Jane. She's our affluent millennial. She spends about an average of 7 hours online a day. She goes to about 10 different sources before even making a purchasing decision. But probably most importantly, she cares a lot more about the why, or almost as much about the why as the what. And what I mean by that is that she really wants to know what your company's mission is and what your vision is and the purpose behind what you're doing. All right, so this is what influences our buying decisions. First and foremost, your social presence. We want to see if you are where we are. So we want to see if you're on Instagram, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Snapchat. I think about 67% of millennials said that they would be more willing to buy with a company that they have a positive social interaction with them on their social channels. Secondly is the relationship. So this is everything from like the first time you buy a brand to kind of like the ongoing courtship, because it should be a courtship, right? It's kind of like dating. It's like you meet someone, you take them on dates, and then subsequent dates happen. Family influence. I know at least for me, I tend to buy a lot of the brands that my parents did when I was growing up. Purpose, like I said, there's that social good component, just knowing what a company's mission and vision is. Brand loyalty, of course. I know that there's some rumors about how millennials aren't brand loyal or company loyal. We'll talk about that too in a little bit. But actually 60% of millennials are loyal to the brands that they're currently using. Independent research, we obviously have a plethora of resources to do research about brands, so we're doing a lot of this research on our own. We look at our peers, probably more so than consumer reports or consumer reviews. And then, of course, those personalized experiences. So I think companies like Netflix and Amazon are really raising the bar in terms of the experiences that we tend to expect from brands today. So I want to talk about, millennials are obviously, we're native content creators. We grew up with social media, but I want to talk about one of the ways that we're creating content, and that is we're doing a lot of publishing. And we're doing a lot of publishing on the LinkedIn platform, which is, by the way, a free tool. So LinkedIn has now become the definitive publishing platform around the world. We have over 1 million publishers publishing over 130,000 posts a week. And millennials make up about 30% of all long-form posts on the platform. But not only that, they're also reaching a really high-quality audience. So the people that are reading these posts are reaching people that are in the upper ranks of their companies, so VPs, CEOs, et cetera. And then just an insider tip that I wanted to share. People always ask me, what should I publish about? I feel like I have nothing to say. And really, you should just publish about what you know. So your professional expertise or industry trends, or maybe you went to a conference like this and you felt inspired, so you went back to your LinkedIn profile and you published something cool. I wanted to share an example too. So my colleague, Paul Patron, he's on the LinkedIn Learning team. He has a really robust social following, as you can see. He's always publishing on the platform, sharing content, connecting with like-minded individuals who care about learning and just like LinkedIn learning in general. But he also syndicates any blog that he writes for LinkedIn Learning on the publishing platform, and that way and he links it back so he gains a quality referral link as well.
When it comes to video, we know that just paying attention to marketing press, that video is the hot format right now, and it's especially resonant with millennials. 76% of millennials are following a brand on YouTube right now. Question you got to ask yourself, are they following you? You know, 60% of millennials would rather watch a company video than read a company newsletter. So think about that. And 80% of millennials find video helpful during the early stages of their research process. So video plays it contributes at all stages of the relationship, or the journey, if you will, that we're after. And I'm going to show you an example here. There is audio. Imagine a really snappy music video playing. I guess you can see the video, right? All right. Anyway, some people that they don't even work for LinkedIn, Travis Howley and some fellow with one word as a name, Mansuka, I assume it's the guy with the hat, they just decided to express their love for LinkedIn, and they created a music video. And I know a lot of people will look at a video like this, and you know it's auto-tuned, so it sounds cool. They'll think that, you know, if I had to buy this from an agency, have an agency do this for you, know, what is it going to cost? $5 grand, $8 grand, $10 grand? So it's going to cost a lot of money. It costs nothing. What I'm saying is, you know, you have people in this age group, millennials, that have grown up, as I said before, with creating content, creating media. This is just normal. And you're going to find, sure, you could go to an agency, maybe you should for some video projects, but there are other projects where you can tap into influencers that are not only fully skilled and capable of creating really interesting video content like this, they also have an audience to promote it to. Now, in this case, it's user-generated content. But as a partnership with influencers, it's something that you could do right now to make a mark with video, especially with some of the upcoming things that are coming out on LinkedIn on video that you could take advantage of.
If you guys haven't seen that video, you should definitely check it out. It's absolutely hilarious. We're all in hysterics in the LinkedIn office when we saw it. He's basically just like professing his love to LinkedIn, and it's auto-tuned, and it's really funny. But anyway, so I actually published the very first LinkedIn Millennial Playbook about 2 years ago, and the reason why I did it was because I was sick and tired of all the stereotypes that you hear about millennials, that I'm sure you have too, that we need a trophy every time we do something good in the workplace or in our personal lives, or that we live in our parents' basement, or that we can't text and walk at the same time, or whatever it is. So hopefully I'm going to be able to bust some myths, or maybe have a few laughs at my generation's expense. All right, so the first is that millennials are lazy. This is actually, when you type into Google, millennials are, lazy is the first thing that populates, the first thing. I didn't even prompt this. This is an actual screenshot, followed by like a lot of other unflattering and terrible words, right? Like, it's not good. But I'd like to counter that by saying we found some research that actually said that it's more about competition. So 59% of millennials said that competition is what gets us up in the morning, more so than the other generations. And we actually kind of compare ourselves more to our peers in the workplace, more so than other generations. So I don't know if that's necessarily a lazy trait. I think it's kind of like this ambitious fire that we have. So that's kind of the opposite of lazy, in my opinion. Next one is that we're the me generation, right? We love selfies. We are obsessed with ourselves. We like talking about ourselves. We don't ask questions about other people. I don't care about what's going on in the world. I've heard it all. But when you Google me generation, it actually says that it's referring to the baby boomers. So I'm not sticking it on the baby boomers, but I'm just saying that, you know, any generation that's the me generation, like it was generations in the past, it'll be us, it'll be any generation that follows us. It's just how it goes. The next is that we killed loyalty. Apparently, we're just ruining everything. We're killing lots of things. But I'd like to actually say that, you know, we're not killing loyalty at all, or we're not job hopping any faster than Generation X did. And in the research that we did with LinkedIn, we wanted to know why millennials were leaving jobs, and a lot of it was you know, pay and advancement opportunities and more meaningful work. So I'd rather say it's not about loyalty, but more so that there's a lot of opportunities and we're not willing to settle, and we'd rather work for companies that we really believe in and we're producing worthwhile work and feeling really fulfilled. This is a really big one that we're entitled, and Inc. even took it a step further by saying that we might have a problem with a narcissistic personality disorder more so than other generations, which kind of hurt. But I'd like to say that it's not entitlement, but just that we have different, we grew up in a different economic climate than other generations did, and we have different expectations of when people should become financially responsible. We think that on average people should start, like buying cars and houses and paying for their own cell phone bill about a year and a half before the baby boomers did. Oversharing. So if you didn't post it, did it happen? How many of you guys have Snapchat or Instagram that you're here at this beautiful hotel being in a nice hotel room and enjoying all the amenities? Oh, not too many of you guys.
Everybody did.
Okay, I mean, yeah. So yes, we do share a lot, but a study by Nielsen showed that it's actually these shares are really, really valuable, and they might even be more valuable than in-person recommendations or the paid media, the paid efforts that we put behind our media. Now I want to go through a couple of examples of companies that I think are doing it right, just personally as a millennial. When I saw these campaigns, they entertained me, they made me smile, and I know that there were a lot of other people, millennials in LinkedIn office, and just like friends that work in marketing that like these as well. So the first one is GE, which is traditionally might be known as a little bit more of like an old school brand, but they created this whole Unimpossible Missions series on YouTube, which is kind of like Mythbusters, but shorter. They also knew that 37% of millennials listen to podcasts, so they created a podcast called The Message, which is all about like the NSA hiring all these hackers to decode this alien message that they get, and of course like all this mystery ensues. And they also just have a really robust Instagram following, and I think the main takeaways here are that they're having a little bit of fun. They're kind of putting a face to their company. They're not just a faceless company, they're a bunch of people that are trying to improve the world with science. And they are where their audience is, right? They're on Instagram, they're on YouTube, they're creating videos because millennials are consuming tons of video. Second is Tom. So I'm sure you guys know that they have the 1-for-1 program. So every time you buy a pair of shoes, they give a pair of shoes to a child in need. And I think this really speaks to the social good component that millennials like to engage with brands with, and they even take it so far as to call it story living. So they're allowing millennials to participate in this story with them and giving back to the community. Millennials are sharing because they're proud that they bought a pair of Toms and they gave back to the community. So just little things like that. Millennials want to align with companies and spend their hard-earned cash at places that they can feel good about. And then the third is, I love this campaign by MailChimp. I think you might have seen it earlier if you were around for Brian's keynote this morning, but essentially they were having fun with their own name. It was the Did You Mean campaign. So did you mean fail chips? Did you mean mail shrimp? Et cetera. And it was really non-traditional. They poured lots of money in making billboards for this kind of stuff. They actually manufactured these failed chips and distributed them. So it was just like these bags of chips, but they were all like the crumpled kind, which Brian said that those are his favorite because they're most seasoned, but I think they're the worst. Like I'd rather have like actual chips. So anyway, they took it the next level. It was a multi-channel campaign. And as a side note, they have a really awesome Instagram following as well. They consistently show pictures of their employees having fun and highlighting different employees and behind the scenes at the workplace. And I think that's kind of like a dual benefit, right? Because they're attracting top talent, and also they're just making millennials and everyone really feel more connected to them and giving them this behind the scenes look at what it's like to work there.
So those are some examples for you to think about of how major brands have created content that has really not literally resonated with this millennial, but lots of others. Another piece of making this actionable is how do we organize influencer marketing in an organization? And I love this graphic from our partner Tracker that takes a very holistic view, because your increasing level of sophistication at understanding where influence lies, where does it play best, where do collaborations really need to happen, where can they manifest in a meaningful way, is where you can get the most value. So from an organization standpoint, first, I think the important thing to do is take that holistic view of who is actually influential. It's not just the famous people outside your organization. It is your employees, it is your customers, and my favorite, your prospective customers. So you folks who are very heavy into ABM, you really need to think about how you can use influencer marketing with your ABM efforts. There's some really cool stuff that Tracker's putting out about that, and it's a shortcut to revenue, basically. Obviously, employees, increasingly, employee advocacy, but also building employees as influencers, whether executives or someone who's a mid-level manager. The other holistic view has to do with where does this exist in the organization. Beyond marketing, we have influencer relations as tied to public relations, media relations, and earned media. We also can have influencers as part of customer success, right? Current customers who are co-creating, participating with you and telling customer success stories. Also community management and talent acquisition. I mean, just think about, you have someone who's become successful in their career that's an influencer, or they're very respected and credible in their industry. How about having them be a part of your talent brand promotions, right? Think, and alumni from your organization that are also influential, that sort of thing. Now, part of the organization is understanding your audience, right? And as I mentioned, empathy is pretty critical here. And empathizing with millennials, or actually in this case with SnapApp and Ein's Marketing, doing research to find out what matters most to them when they're choosing vendors. In the process of choosing vendors, what stands out the most? The number one thing, community involvement. Community involvement on the behalf of the B2B brand. The second thing, what are the company's values? And then finally we get to the website and marketing content. So think about this. If millennials-aged folks are part of the audience you're trying to engage with, are you making it difficult or are you making it easy for them to understand what your community involvement is, what your company values are? Are you making them work to find that content? Or are you just leading with product, service, features, benefits, and marketing messages? And this is going to require a shift, I think, for folks to implement that sort of perspective, but it's something that's needed. On top of what matters is what kind of content matters. What are the content preferences? And in this study by Sakunas, video was on top, which we can expect. And next, after that, was case studies, followed by white papers and brochures. If you can get video and case study together, right, video case studies, right, any text content you're publishing should be considered in terms of whether there's a video counterpart that could be made. Not everything deserves to have video made, but some of it does, right? Yes, and that's my sneaky way of sharing a case study. All right, so in terms of making this efficient and effective, operationalizing your processes is what you need to do. And this is what I'm doing, is I'm literally sharing a model that we use where we integrate content, search, social, and influencer marketing, and the red boxes are where influencer marketing lies in this process. So this exists all the way from research and developing strategy to content planning to doing audits, which basically compares where you are today, where you want to be. The gap is what we do for implementation and content creation, content promotion, and then monitoring, measuring performance, optimizing performance, right? You all will have access to this deck, so you can get this later if you want. So some takeaways. I've given you lots of information. I hope there's some threads of insight that are useful to you. I think it's interesting. In a study that we did with Tracker and Altimeter Group, 57% of marketers believe that influencer marketing will be integrated across marketing communications in 2 years. That's a very, very optimistic view, I think, given the state of where B2B is right now. B2B's made a lot of progress in the last year, but I think we're going to start to see a lot more acceleration. In terms of millennials, I think one of the big takeaways is that millennials-aged folks are active and capable content creators, and they're also very likely to be influenced by their peers who are content creators. If you think about that, that is a tremendous opportunity for B2B to create relationships with folks inside and outside your company to be a part of your marketing programs. And in terms of the myth busting, millennials are actually ambitious. They are active and loyal, far beyond the brand. And if you really want to make meaningful connections, inspire influencers with what you're doing as a company in terms of social cause and purpose. And be where they are. If you're using traditional promotion, traditional channels, and that is not where the millennials amongst your customer set spend their time, that's the disconnect that you need to solve for. And also have a sense of humor. Always have a sense of humor. It's not just for millennials. And bringing it back to business, identify those processes. If you think about that maturity model, as you go from experimentation to process to relationships, right? Authority and integration. As you think of those different stages, you got to think about how can we start with the end in mind and identify sort of the process opportunities as we start to experiment and give ourselves a path to success, as opposed to what a lot of folks are doing is just running a campaign, doing a shitty job of it, and saying, you know what, this just doesn't work at all. Yes, that's what that last bullet says. All right, so this is what we specialize in my agency at Top Rank Marketing, and whether you want to know more about it or whether you're someone who's really got influencer marketing nailed, we're hiring. I'd love to talk to you, and thank you very much. So, are we set up for questions? Because we have a few minutes. Anybody? Or no? Anybody have a question? No. Over here? Oh, yeah. Sorry, whoever's got the mic, you got to run way over.
Hand? Where's the hand?
Can you raise your hand if you have a question?
Raise your hand.
And the mic will come to you.
Okay, I saw you.
Hello?
Hello.
There we go. Thank you for that presentation. My question is around what you see in this research that kind of either is in partnership or contradicts the stuff that someone like Tim Riestra talks about when he's discussing the decision-making process, things like preference stability, and kind of, the fact that all of it is actually more of a psychological game that actually transcends millennials, baby boomers, Generation X, you name it. All of us, regardless of age in this room, are stuck to the status quo, right? Like, that's not something that's unique to millennials. All of us have preference stability. All of us have, generally from the research that they've shown, all of us are more likely to be influenced by insights. I'm just wondering, it puts millennials in a bit of a special box, but aren't we all just subject to the same kind of psychological framework, and actually that is actually what's driving decision making rather than the year that you were born in?
So I got about half of that. I apologize. So if I understand, if this is even close to what you're asking, so we're focusing on millennial. Actually, we were talking not generically, generally about influencer marketing and the opportunities there, but focusing very specifically on millennials and the opportunity to work with them as a segment. Everyone has the ability to contribute, and in a meaningful way, and it's up to the brand to decide, well, who makes the most sense for our customers, for the content project, for the campaign or whatever it is. I don't know if that has anything to do with what you asked, but is that even close?
I think you were also kind of saying just like that it's not a millennial thing, it's an everyone thing. Like, of course, everyone wants to buy from a company that does good stuff for the community. Everyone wants to work with a company who's funny, like, et cetera. And I do agree with that. I think one of the points was just that, like, millennials, we grew up with social media, and we, I don't know, it's almost like non-marketing is the only marketing we know. Like, we're just very sensitive to marketing messages because we've, like, been infiltrated with them at such a young age. So, I think it does apply to everyone. It's not just a millennial thing, but I just think that the millennials have a little bit of a different mindset, maybe I'm wrong because I'm a millennial, but different mindset when it comes to, like, advertising and, like, receiving the advertising messages and, like, having an experience versus being interrupted by advertising, like having the advertising, like, flow with the experience rather than interrupting it. I don't know if that helps, but.
We can talk afterwards if you like to. Any other questions?
Oh, come on. I got it, Deb.
No. There's one over here.
So you talked about community involvement as being like one of the most important things for millennial buyers, but how do you promote that without, making it feel like you're doing a good deed just to promote your products? Like, how do you do it in a tasteful way?
How do you what? What was the last part?
How do you do it in a tasteful way where you're talking about
Sure.
your community involvement, but doing it in a way that it doesn't just feel like it's a lead into pushing your product?
Right. So part of that connection with for retention, you mean? I mean, if you have, so you identify. Obviously, you can, the whole idea of activating people who are raising their hand amongst your community, you can activate them and give them tools to help them do more of what they're already doing in terms of advocacy and being helpful to the community. That's kind of community management. On top of that, you can add, you can use influencer software, if you will, to identify those people, to kind of quantify and qualify those who are most ideal for you to want to work with, meaning that they have channels of distribution, they have places where they publish, where they communicate, and people actually respect and act on the things that they say, right? So how do you deliver they should be delivering their behavior in an organic way. In fact, most of what it is that we do I know at our agency, it's organic. So we do pay some influencers, but it's the exception, not the rule. So they have an organic interest in the success of the community. They have an organic interest in the product. They're literally talking about something that they would kind of talk about anyway, but the brand is, making it easier for them to do so. They're giving them tools to make them more effective at doing so, if that helps.
I think also, like, if your company is doing social good, like, it should be something that's kind of like authentic and intrinsically integrated into your company's mission and vision. Like, I don't think that doing something good just to get a millennial's attention should ever, like, getting a millennial's attention should never be the goal. It should just be like the icing on the cake of like having a truly innovative, cool company and doing cool things.
Super. Well, we are out of time. Thank you very much, and happy hour.